Well, hello everyone, and welcome to week 4. We are nearly halfway through our course already. I also want to let you know that week 4 is also midterm week, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's get started. So this week in the history of American politics, one hit is one of the most significant events in the women's suffrage movement. The first convention in the country called exclusively to discuss the need for women's rights. And this convention occurred 72 years prior to the passage of the 19th Amendment, which established voting rights for women in the United States. And it is the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls in Rochester, New York, in 1848. The leaders were Lucretia Coffin Mott, Martha Coffin Wright, that was Lucretia's sister, Mary Ann McClintock, who was a Quaker, and Jane Hunt, who was also a Quaker, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And I have pictured Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She's a very integral person in the women's rights movement and abolition, for that matter. Okay, so let's do some quick facts. The two-day convention resulted in the adoption of two documents, the Declaration of Sentiments and an accompanying list of resolutions. Now, in 1848, there's two things going on. There is abolition, which is really starting to take hold in the United States, and the women's rights movement. Now, the women's rights movement is really coming on and part of the abolitionist movement. They didn't have their own, let's say, organization until the Seneca Falls and Rochester, New York conventions that were separated from the abolition movement. Also, the Declaration of Rights and Sentiments used constitutional language to underline the inconsistencies between national commitments to human equality, excuse me, and the treatment of women. So, this is very important. The abolition movement, of course, is bringing along the women's rights movement. The women's rights movement, all their players are abolitionists, almost to a T. And so two things are going on. The abolition movement, of course, against slavery, and the women's rights movement of voting basically was a situation where women in the United States haven't had the right to vote except in some states, but federally they had no mandate to vote in the United States and won't until 1919. But this is a very, very important convention. I beg you to read up on it. That it's very important when it comes to civil rights, and not so much civil liberties, but civil rights. And we're going to get more into that when we do the week, excuse me, dedicated to civil rights and civil liberties. What's the difference and what that entails, okay? So this is what this week is we're celebrating. So let's move on. 4 is also midterm week. So your midterm grade will be calculated by applying all the graded material from week 1 through week 4. Okay, so everything that's going to be graded this week is part of your midterm grade. And I put a little chart at the bottom for you with the points versus the letter grade. So if you have 235 to 211, you have an A, and then work your way down. And then, of course, if you have 140 or less, you're failing the course. And if you are at that situation, you need to contact me as quick as you can, and let's see if we can get you brought up to speed. But remember, this is midterm week. I will turn in those midterm grades in week 5. I'll try to do it by Tuesday, but of week 5. But I will do it as quick as I possibly can. But remember, you can get an idea of what you have by looking at your grades on Blackboard and look at the point values, and you can convert it over and on this chart that I have here. Okay? All right, let's move on. The topic for week 4 is political parties 1. Week 5, which will be next week, is political parties 2. All right? Um, just as we've looked at in the previous presentations, the chapters need to be read. You need to complete them to take the quiz or to get full credit for the quiz. Remember your class discussions. Your class discussion will not be graded until you comment on a student's um, discussion post. Once you put your post on and you've commented on the students, then I will grade your discussion for the week. The video lectures for the week, one is the history of the Democratic Party. It's a little bit longer. And then the second one is the election of 1856. Now, the reason I put that on here is that Eric Foner, who is a leading authority and writer on the Republican Party after, from its inception until after my goodness, I'm blanking, but it takes it up until the end of Reconstruction. So that's the reason he's on there. It's a short video lecture, and you're going to think that it's a little bit out of sorts than from the history of the Democratic Party. It's not really, because 1856 is the first national election that a Republican runs for office. Doesn't win, but it's the first time that a Republican runs for national office. All right? All right, let's move on. That's about it for the overview for week 4. You should now be aware of all the information and expectations of week 4. If you still have some questions, do not hesitate to contact me. If for some reason you don't get me on my phone during my office hours, please email me and I will answer as quick as I possibly can. Okay? So with that being said, let's dream about it raining donuts. All right, everybody. Have a great week.